Well, we just had a comment from Mr. Chiman Naji about those polling or voting points. He thinks, well, why create this new polling units when you could just have the already existing polling units? If they've got a lot more people that they can take, split them into voting points and not polling units, and have whoever is in those areas join up to make up the figure so that it can be it can accommodate a lot more people instead of creating fresh polling units.
A lot of what my little friend Nadia said, that is one way of doing it, and that is a good thing. And to an extent, that has been satisfied, right? But he has to understand all the criteria for the creation of additional units. That is one of them, to depopulate existing units. Depopulation by means of, yes, you can have two, but then they will be in the same point, or you can take a second one and move it closer to the people. One is to decongest polling units. The second is to bring the units closer to the people. So in a rural area, for example, where you have maybe 5-10 kilometers in between polling units, and you have 800 people and they have been in one polling unit, it will not be fair to leave all 800 in one unit. You now have to move one, maybe 400, to this neighboring community to service them. In an urban area like Lagos and Abuja, where there are concentrations of people, you can go to one primary school or a public school and have all these people create 10 units in one polling in one polling center.
Okay, if I
in a rural area where there are longer distances, then you have a challenge problem there.
If I understand what he's saying and try to understand what you are saying, now the interpretation I get, the question that will pop up from those two is that if you're trying to decongest the polling units, so why can't INEC decongest that by creating voting points, not polling units? Voting points means that a polling unit, if you've got 1,500 people on a polling unit, you split them. If you want to do it into 3, you have 500 each in different centers. Take it closer to the people, because that's the way you can get it closer, because they are not polling units, but voting points means they derive their powers from the already existing polling units. Is that correct?
Yes. That is being done, but don't forget there's a clamour. If there's a new settlement and there's no polling unit, they have to travel a long distance to that place. That's why you have 1,500 in that example you used. But rather than leave them concentrated in one place, is it not fair enough to move one of those units, voting points, and create a unit and move it closer to, for example, another estate, maybe 1, 2, 3 kilometers away from that? That is part of what we have done by these additional units.
But, you know, part of the question that is popping up on Twitter here is that, for instance, they don't understand how the crisis reading part of the North is having more polling units than the Southeast, for instance, even the South.
That's a reasonable question to ask, actually, very fair. Now, as of 2011, when the election was conducted, this crisis had not boiled over. It probably was simmering, but there hadn't been this mass exodus of people from crisis areas at 2011. We must use extant figures that we have, large figures that we have.
Okay, has INEC conducted this aggregated finger identification system? Because they tell us that that's about the best way to clean up all the data you have. And the question is, if INEC has satisfactory, or if they've done that, why don't you rely on that figure, on the voting population, and leave out all of those sensors and the rest of it?
Well, that's what I explained earlier to you. We are primarily, and maybe my little friend there in the studio did not quite understand that. When you read out certain figures and said certain people were going to lose, that would have been the case if we used the population figures. I now can explain what you were trying to say earlier on. Some states that you mentioned would have lost. But rather than do that, we now are using exclusively the total number of registered voters post-ACES after the cleanup. And nobody is losing. That is what that's the comparative figure of what they would have lost compared to what they now gained.
A lot lot of people are still confused, Mr. Osaze-Uzzi, at least from the responses that we're seeing here on Twitter. And we really do wish that you had gotten a hold of this publication, because INEC did send it to all the media houses. In fact, it was in one of the national dailies, and that's where, at least that's the copy that Mr. Naji is holding. But you say that you have not seen a copy of this publication at all.
To you. The losses, I think I haven't seen it at all. I don't have it with me here.
I beg your pardon?
I don't have that publication with me now, presently, as I speak with you here, from where I'm speaking. That's what I'm saying, basically.
But have you seen it?
Yes, those figures you're using as minus, based on the 2006 population figures, that is what this state would have lost.
So are you saying that these new polling units were created in proportion with the population figure, not the voter population?
I'm saying the opposite. If we had used the population figures, then probably, so these people would have lost these units. But we are not using that figure. We are using total number of registered voters.
You're using total number of registered voters, which you also admit might have changed because of the new exigencies created by the security situation. Is INEC not factoring that into what has been done?
I think your studio girls did mention again. That's not our response. We cannot do that. We're using what we have. It may be dated, but that is the latest figure we have. Post-ACIS total number of registered voters.
Can AFIS really be said to be complete when we haven't factored in the newly registered voters that have been captured in this continuous voting registration process?
Now, let's understand one thing. The voters register is an organic document. It grows, it changes, people die, people get added. There is no time you're going to have a static figure. We have taken a cut-off date of 2011 fieldwork post-ACIS. That is the latest figure we have.
It means that if it's organic, as you say, this challenge, the challenge that INEC is trying to avoid may still pop up, because you could have areas that you have more people who have registered who will still face this challenge. Because the voter registration, I don't know if it stopped, but it happened.
That is why it is always under review. It shouldn't wait for 18 years to be reviewed. It should be reviewed after every census.